Hello everyone, it's Black Silk and welcome back to my channel. And today I'm going to be reading some of the truest, scariest stories of Reddit. And I'm picking the top terrifying, most horrifying stories on Reddit. And I'm going to read a few of them and let me know what you think. I have never read any of these. I just wanted to say that these stories are supposed to be all real, but I can't guarantee that they are. So if you're skeptical, that's understandable. So the rules of this is to be civil, no untrue stories, and so on and so forth, no advertisement. But basically, they're telling you to be as authentic as possible. So I'm excited to read this. This is a video I'm going to be posting for the Halloween season. It is the end of October, and I'm planning on having this out. I have a couple of videos that I want to put out for the end of this month. And it's almost Halloween in a couple of days, and this is probably going to be the first one because it's probably going to be the shortest, but I do have another video coming out. If it doesn't come out before Halloween, well, I mean, it's still relevant because this channel posts spooky stuff all the time. But in the spirit of spooky season, and because I like scary stuff, like I said, this is why I'm reading this. And wow, I'm excited to just dive into this. And I had a pretty exciting day before I start this. I did a photo shoot with my baby bat. That's why I have my makeup like this right now. But yeah, let's get started. Okay, so we're going to talk about the first one that popped up on the feed, which is my wife stepped on something in the lake. The next day, they found a body. Interesting. So let's check this out. Hopefully my screen's not blocking anything, but my OBS app is being kind of weird right now. It's not recording anything, but I will link this down below. So if you want to check these out yourself, you're able to do it. And read more if you'd like to. I'm probably going to read about maybe 4 or 5 of these stories, depending on how long they are. Okay, so this is marked as terrifying. Alright, let's get started. Okay. A few years ago, when my daughter was a toddler, my wife and I used to take her to a nearby lake to picnic, swim, and just unwind. It was a peaceful spot, quiet, not too crowded, the kind of place where you could easily forget the world for a while. One afternoon, after we finished eating, my wife decided to go for a quick swim while I stayed on the beach with our daughter. I watched her wade out into the water. The sun sparkled off the surface. A minute later, she suddenly stopped and turned to me, shouting something. At first, I couldn't make it out what she said, but her expression was off. Then I heard her clearly. I think I just stepped on someone's face. I froze for a second, thinking maybe she was just joking, but the look on her face wasn't playful. It was pale, almost terrified. She quickly started making her way back to the shore, her legs moving faster, like she couldn't get out of the water fast enough. When she got back to me, she was visibly shaken. She said that while she was swimming, her foot brushed against something soft, and at first she thought it was a rock or a weird patch of seaweed. But when she pressed her foot down, she felt the unmistakable shape of a face beneath the water. A nose, an eye socket. She swore she felt the hollow of the eye. I considered going in to check it out, but something stopped me, the unease in my gut, maybe. We decided to pack up and leave right after that. The next day, the local news reported that a young boy who had been missing for days was found drowned in that same lake, not far from where we had been. He'd been there the whole time, just beneath the surface. To this day, my wife is convinced she stepped on his face. Oh my God. That is horrible. That's sad. That's more sad than scary. Wow. That's sad. So I got questions. Oh, he was missing. Okay, never mind. I was like, how did no one look for him in the lake? He was drowned in the lake. Oh my gosh. That's terrifying. That is absolutely freaking terrifying. Okay. I want to see some of the comments. He responded, this was the year 2000 a while ago. Yeah, she's fine, but I don't think she would have been fine if she had reached down or had found the body and pulled it up or something. It's a small lake, almost a pond. Police said the body was not found where we were, which was at the public swimming area. We think they were either lying to avoid alarming the public or the body drifted. In hindsight, obviously we should have reported. We were young and silly and allowed denials to creep in on the way home. That all went away with the news story. Okay, denial is a river in Egypt, okay, first of all. You can't deny that you felt a body. Like, why didn't you look? Okay, I understand being in a state of shock. I understand that. But why wouldn't you go figure out maybe that's, hey, maybe that actually could be a face or a real body? Why not report it though? But he, like you said, young and dumb, I guess. So there's a couple of more. I went to a serial killer's lair. I came across an incredibly creepy family a while back. Oh, that looks interesting too. Glad you're alive. Okay, serial killer. That looks pretty interesting. Let's check this out. Okay. This is definitely adult. So, if you're not 18 and up, you shouldn't be on my channel in the first place. But, yeah. Okay, so let's read. I went to a serial killer's lair. This is terrifying. The first one wasn't terrifying. It was just sad to me. But let's see if this one's terrifying. Though I guess it's terrifying to someone experiencing it. But yeah, it was more sad than anything. Okay, so hello Redditors. Here is a story I have never told anyone, partially because elements of the story are just not appropriate in most social situations. As a result, I've locked this away in my memory and I rarely think about it. Thank you for sharing. Fair warning, the story does involve some sketchy sexual situations, but does not describe any actual sexual acts. So there's your warning, everyone. Okay. And as another disclaimer, I am completely aware that the story involves me being very stupid and careless. Oh, yikes. I'm not going to inject these acknowledgments into the story, but rest assured that in hindsight, I am aware of the foolishness that took place. I don't need to be chided on that topic. I hope I said that right. All right. Now, where to begin? The year was approximately 1998 through 1999. I was a young gay man in my early 20s. Is this about Jeffrey Dahmer? I don't know. Okay. Living in a medium-sized city in the Midwestern U.S., this was sort of an in-between transitional time for gay people, where in most populous areas, we had enough respect to live openly, but there were still plenty of people who did not like us. Kind of similar to now, but yeah, a little bit harder, more harsher back then. It was well before the invention of smartphones, and the internet was still in the early stages of mass adoption. There were large communities online, but it was not yet at the point where most Americans were online. Online socialization consisted of chat rooms hosted by various services like AOL, Yahoo, or IRC servers, and message boards were still in use by large numbers of people. For gay men at that time, it was nothing short of revolutionary. Prior to the internet and to the broader cultural changes, gay men have been stuck looking for fun in secretive and or shady places due to the inability to freely express ourselves. In the 90s, it was still somewhat risky, but the internet offered a way to talk freely and relatively anonymously without the risk of being outed or worse. For this reason, it really took off in gay communities, and gay men were a very large part of the user base for these social platforms. It was suddenly very easy and relatively safe to find dates, friends, or just sex, and it quickly became the norm for a lot of gay men. On the other hand, being such a new communication tool for most people, we were sometimes blind to the risk. Being an attractive young man in my prime, I made liberal use of online communities to find dates. That is to say, I had plenty of hookups. My city had a decent number of chat rooms and personal message boards, and I had mostly great experiences. I met the typical assortment of good guys, closet cases, and weirdos that you expect. I wasn't an absolute hoe by most standards, but suffice to say that a cute gay guy at that time could genuinely have a lot more dates than your typical straight person. LOL. At some point during this time, I'd had some brief chat on a message board with a guy from my city. I forgot his screen name. It's been over 20 years. So let's call him Slim Guy 65. This back and forth had happened on a general thread in the gay section, not in private messages, so it was visible to anyone who chose to read that thread. Nothing had come of it, but about a week later I received an email from an unrecognized address. First red flag. Okay. The email basically said, hey, I'm not gay and I don't agree with the gay lifestyle. Okay, that's already a red flag right there. It's the second red flag. Okay, so this is someone in the closet who's most likely dangerous. I'm here because my friend met this Slim Guy 65 person from this message board, and the guy really hurt him. I don't want this to happen to anyone else. My friend tried to tell the police, but they wouldn't do anything about it. I see you were talking to Slim Guy 65. Just be careful, stay away from him. Oh, this isn't the guy trying to reach out to him for a hookup. This is the guy who's a friend of a guy who got hurt by this serial killer person. Okay, my mistake. I apologize. I thought he was in the closet and he was denying it, so ignore that. Okay, that's strange. What does this person mean by really hurt him? Was his heart broken? Did he get beaten up or verbally abused or what? I responded to the email asking for clarification on what exactly happened. I never received a response. I was slightly weirded out by it, but on the other hand, it's an anonymous email for someone who doesn't respond, and it is vague about their warning. This could be anything. It could be some disgruntled ex trying to mess with the guy. It could be a real warning about someone gay bashing. It could be someone trolling who doesn't have anything to do with anyone. I kept it in the back of my mind, but pretty much shrugged it off. Several weeks later, I had a weekday off work, and decided to take to the internet to fish for some D. As was my custom, lo and behold, I had an email response to a personal ad. It was Slim Guy 65. Uh-oh. He was offering to meet at his place to hang out and just have a good time. Is this Jeffrey Dahmer? No, I think that's earlier. Wink, wink, nudge, nudge. I won't go into details. And as I recall, there weren't really many details discussed other than the small tasks and intros we'd done previously. Nothing about this guy was really sounding interesting to me, but I had no other offers on this day, so I decided, why not? I'll go see what this dude is about after you've been warned about it. Okay. He said he made some dumb choices. Wow, this is a longer story than I thought. As I typed my reply, I suddenly remembered the strange email that I had received a warning about this person. I went back and reread it. It's still vague, still presenting more questions and no answers. Should I take this anonymous warning at face value or just ignore SG65? I decided to go check him out anyway. His address was on a rather busy street in the middle of a dense residential area, not some shack out in the woods. I can handle myself. If he's weird, I can just fuck out of there. Before long, I arrived at the house at the agreed time. It was a duplex-style house with one apartment on the ground floor, and one on the second floor, part of a row of several identical duplexes. It was the middle of the afternoon. There was plenty of traffic on the street and the occasional person out on their porch or in their backyard. I pulled up the driveway to the parking area behind the house, got out, and knocked on the door. The guy that answered was a pretty normal, kind of mousy-looking man, probably in his 40s, slight, slim-built, soft-spoken, looked like any guy working in an office cubicle somewhere. Not really my type, but honestly my curiosity was piqued, and I had nothing better to do. So I stepped inside to take a look around and gauge the situation, with the warning email fresh in my mind. I stepped into the back door into the kitchen. It was very clean, and there was nothing out on the counters, and no table and chairs or anything. That is to say, it did not look like someone was living there. It had been kept up and cleaned, but looked empty. Looking out into the apartment, I could see that it was not set up as a living space. A large window with a sliding glass was between the kitchen and the living room, and I could see what looked like a large table out in the living room. SG65 said something like, "This isn't where I live. A friend of mine used to run a doctor's office here. I maintain the building for him. It's private though. We have the place to ourselves." Weird. Okay. Yeah, I'd definitely say so. He shut the back door and locked it with a keyed deadbolt. Okay, that's getting a little scary. The kind that you need a key to open. even from the inside, and put his keys back in his pocket, saying, "So, what do you want to do?" At this point, my danger sense spiked. This is not a normal home, and why is he locking the door like that? It's not necessarily suspect. A lot of people have that sort of lock on their door, and the door has a window, so even if it makes sense, still something is not right here. I can tell, and now I'm locked in. I'm going to see how long this is. Oh my gosh, this is pretty long, so I might just do 4. Lost my spot for a second because there's a lot of text. I asked him why he was locking the door like that, which immediately flustered him. He was looking rather nervous, and his voice was a little wavery and halting. Not quite stuttering, but almost. He said, well, we don't want someone to come in and interrupt us, right?" Flashing a weak, unconvincing smile. His demeanor and body language were all I needed to confirm that this guy was up to no good, or at least there was something he was hiding. However, I could tell that I was intimidating him. I was not a particularly muscular kid, but I have a larger frame. Like, even when I'm at my very thinnest, I will wear size L tops and 36-inch waist pants, so I look big, which people tend to interpret as me being stronger than I really am. Also, I'm not a tough guy at all, but I have a resting facial expression that makes me look like a badass thug. People who don't know me often assume that I'm rough or something. I sometimes use this as to my advantage while I can, because before long a new acquaintance will eventually figure out that I'm a total wimp. LOL. But this was definitely an occasion to play up the tough guy appearance, and I did exactly that. I put on my best steely face and told him to unlock the door, and that I don't want to be locked in here. He looked for a moment like he was going to pee his pants, and then he said, "Okay, alright, I'll unlock it." He unlocked the deadbolt, and "I'll just lock the knob here." And he turned the little dial that locks the doorknob. That was fine with me. I continued to stare at him until he said, "I'll leave the keys on the counter right here." And he set the keys down near the sink. I was relatively satisfied with that answer. At this point, though, my adrenaline was flowing. I was almost in full fight or flight mode. But I was kind of stuck in place. The guy was between me and the door. I was freaked out. But this little weasel did not appear to pose any immediate physical threat to me. I could tell that his pant pockets were empty and that I was intimidating the living hell out of him. I didn't know yet exactly what to do. Now keep in mind that despite my wordy descriptions, this all happened very quickly, without any really long pauses. It had only been maybe 1 to 2 minutes since I had stepped in the door. This all happened at the pace of a conversation. The guy was obviously nervous and trying not to appear so. He said, "Well, let's go in," and walked a wide path around me through the kitchen into what normally would be the living room, and toward the hall to the right from there. I was familiar with this floor layout. It is very common in this area. The hallway would lead to 2 small bedrooms with a bathroom in between them. I hesitated, thinking I should just walk out that back door and take off. But really, now I was super curious. I knew there's no way in hell I'm doing anything with this guy, but I kind of want to see what's going on in here. I'm also confident that he can't take me if it comes to a fight, so I slowly headed towards the living room. It felt like I was walking in slow motion. From the kitchen entrance, I could see a large rectangular stainless steel table taking up a lot of the living room. I remember thinking, this looks like a surgical table. It looked like it could rise and tilt, and it had a recessed channel running all the way around the edge. In hindsight, I now know what that was. It was 100% a mortician's table. Dude had a mortician's table in there. But at that time, I thought it looked like a medical table of some sort. There was some sort of office type cabinets and stuff around, I think, but now all I really remember is the table in that room. The large front window looking out onto the street was covered by vertical blinds that were closed. SG65 said something like, "This used to be a doctor's office. Like I said, come on back here." The hallway revealed a room setup that I expected. The first bedroom door was closed. The second door was open to a small, very clean bathroom. At the end of the hall was the other bathroom, which looked like, if the doctor's office story was true, had at one time been converted to an exam room. He said, "We can go in that room if you want. Go ahead and take a look." and he stayed by the other closed bedroom door. The back bedroom door was open, and I could see that the walls were covered in honey-colored wood paneling, the type you might see in a den or office that hasn't been updated since the early 1970s. I slowly took a few steps down to the door, trying to be very aware of what Mr. Creepy was doing behind me. He didn't move. When I got up to that room, the first thing I noticed was the door had a keyed deadbolt lock, like the back door. This room locked from the outside. I wondered if there was a lever on the inside, but I pretty much knew the answer to that question without needing to check. I also saw a chair, a non-swiveling plastic desk chair with thin metal legs, sitting near the center of the room. The room had old dark carpet and those wood panel walls. I noticed that the walls were completely paneled with no windows. And I know that the room had at least one window, probably two. So whoever did that paneling went over the windows. There was also a phone in there, plugged in and sitting on the floor. It was an old office phone, probably from around the 80s or early 90s. Dingy beige plastic with several buttons to manage different phone lines. Just sitting on the carpet near the wall with a chair at a slight distance facing the phone, there was nothing else in that room. I was standing at the threshold of that room with one foot slightly in, not absolutely not going past that door. I looked back at Dude. He was still standing by that other door, just nervously smiling at me, trying hard to look casual, but obviously very nervous or something. He said something like, "Well, what do you want to do?" Instead of answering, I felt around the backside of the deadbolt locks. Sure enough, nothing there but smooth wood of the door. It also dawned on me that I did not see a light switch anywhere for the ceiling lamp. Where was the switch? Who knows? It should have been just inside the door. Of course, the original switch was covered up by the paneling. He mumbled something about not having the key to that lock. Don't worry about it. I turned back to face the guy and just said, "What is it that you want to do in here?" My skin had gone ice cold as I realized that I was way too far to this apartment. I was running through my options in my head. What is this guy going to do? He doesn't appear to have any weapons or anything in reach, but who the fuck knows what goes on in his place? What are you trying to do? He was almost totally derailed by that. He stammered out some hot man-to-man fun with the weakest smile I've ever seen, looking like he was just a hair's breadth away from panicking. That sounds comical, but really that sentence was probably the most chilling part of the entire experience for me. It was the way he said it, like he had come up with something on the fly, something that would sound plausible, and he failed. Who says that in real life? Hey, do you want to have some hot man-to-man fun? Nobody. It's something you see on an advertisement for a cheesy porn site or something. Some hot man-to-man fun? Smile, quivering lips. That was it, I said. Nope, I want to go. I'm leaving. He said, okay. I quickly walked past him as he flattened himself against the wall to avoid me, and I noped right out of there. I noped right out through the living room dissection area and through the kitchen to the back door, which was thankfully still not dead-bolted. The keys were still on the counter. I let myself out of the door, and I didn't bother closing that. As soon as I saw him slowly coming to the door behind me, I deliberately walked, not ran, to my car. I looked back at the building, and I could see that, indeed, there was a window facing the backyard area from the panel room, but of course it was covered up from the inside. Dude was shutting and locking the back door. And I left, heart pounding, skin icy cold, thinking, holy fuck, what was that? So, was this guy some kind of killer, or was he just an awkward closeted gay guy with access to a sterile looking apartment with autopsy and mortuary table? And a windowless room that locks from the outside with a chair and a phone and no light switch. It's clear to me that the poor soul who walks into that room gets locked in. He probably shuts off the light from somewhere and calls the phone. Other than that, it's anyone's guess what happens. I assume the friend of the judgmental person who emailed me must have been some kid that got locked in for whatever game ensues. Driving home, at first I thought, of course I have to call the police and tell them what's in that place. but thinking it through, I realized I didn't really have any crime to tell them about. I went to meet a man for casual sex, and what? He has a room with a chair in it. He has, as I thought at the time, an exam table. The police aren't going to do anything with that story. The guy didn't touch me or do anything to me, and I left. And I considered calling an anonymous tip line, but again, what exactly would I report? There was no actionable crime. Also, keep in mind that at the time, while the local police in the city were pretty decent, they weren't especially interested in getting involved with helping the gays. They'd prosecute actual crimes if it was cut and dry, but I've heard plenty of accounts of them choosing not to follow up on cases where there was not an easy arrest to be made. I decided not to report anything because nothing would come of it except drawing unwanted attention to myself. Even in retrospect, I think that was probably the most rational choice to make. If this happened today in 2020, the law enforcement would probably be a lot more interested in it. But back then, not so much. So live and learn. I still drove past that house once in a while in the normal course of life for several years, and I pay attention to how it looked. The vertical blinds were closed for maybe 5 to 6 years wherever I went past. Or I think he meant whenever I went past. Then eventually the blinds were down and there were decorative curtains in the window, so I assumed the place was eventually sold to someone who actually lived in it. Around 2002, maybe 2003, there was a murder of a young man on the news. He'd been found in the next state, which borders my city, so it's not very far. I recognized the guy from the gay community, but I didn't know him personally. A friend mentioned to me something about a local serial killer. I said, "What?" He explained that a few young men had gone missing over the past year, each after being at one specific dive bar, and each being found several miles to the north past the state line, out in the country. The case on the news matched up with that MO. My friend told me the young guy who had been at the bar and left with someone the night that he had disappeared. The news report didn't mention anything about a gay bar or similar recent cases, of course. I had to wonder if my acquaintances from the internet had anything to do with it. The location of the murders apparently was nowhere near that duplex, at least according to the story I was told. I never heard of a resolution to that murder on the news or any official mention of the suspected serial killer other than some gossip. So that happened. Okay, so we don't know if those two are related, but it seems like it's related because I don't know if he couldn't convince people to get into that room. But yeah, nowadays, if you report something like that, that's something that people will take seriously. Back then, yeah, I don't think they would have taken it seriously. So that was a bit of a terrifying experience, but I wouldn't say, I mean, that was a terrifying experience. I think if he was anyone else who might have appeared weaker to this guy, he probably would have been harmed or killed. I don't know. I feel like he should have reported it. I know, like he said, there was a small chance that they were going to take it seriously, but he might have been able to save some people's lives by reporting it. Because I'm not saying those two are related, but you gotta wonder because it was pretty close to where he lives. So I'm going to read like two shorter ones and then be done. Okay, so there's a couple more I can read, and they're much shorter than that last one. So I was expecting more to happen with that last one, but it's still kind of crazy experience. So I'm already at 30 minutes, and I don't want to go like an hour reading this. But yeah, it's still enjoyable. Still a lot of stories. If you all want me to read more stories like this in the future, I will definitely do it past October. Okay, so this says, came across an incredibly creepy family a while back. This is marked as glad you're alive. Interesting. Okay, I never really post anything on Reddit, mostly just reading, so please excuse me if I do or say anything that isn't common courtesy here. And around 2018, 2019, I, 25 female at the time was 18 or 19, was living in Nebraska, where I grew up. I lived in the largest city in Nebraska, but it was still essentially surrounded by corn and wheat fields. The city was expanding, so rich folks started building huge houses with giant properties on the edge of town as things proceeded to grow. All of that being said, I had a good friend whose parents' house was one of those big ones right on the blurring line between the fields and the city. My friends and I were constantly hanging out at his place because it was fun. They had tons of property to ride 4x4s on, a hot tub, a huge living room for us to watch sports and have reality TV binge sessions, etc. Plus, his parents were super cool and we could drink out there as long as we stayed at the house. It was tons of fun, even though am quite scared of the dark. So I would just not go outside after a certain time because there was little lighting and the nearest neighbor was about a mile away. I always felt a weird energy driving to and from his place if it was late at night, but never had anything happen until one night. The drive out there was a long, winding two-way road that had thick trees on both sides. That sounds beautiful to me, by the way. And you pass one of the city's largest cemeteries. Another beautiful thing. Okay, on the way. Barely any lighting, of course, besides the street lamps every once in a while, and very little traffic. It's all inherently a bit creepy, and I'll admit to having sped through this section of the road many times to get through it as quickly as possible. I know people like this who are scared to drive at nighttime and like roads like this, but I actually love driving that time of night in places like that if I'm familiar with the area now. If it's some weird ass place I've never been, I don't like that. This specific night was perfect spring weather, so I was driving with my windows down listening to music. I like doing that too during that time. And it was around 10 p.m., and I was coming around one of the curves in the road when I had essentially slammed my brakes on. Right in front of me in the middle of the road, maybe 50 yards away, was what looked like a family. What the fuck? Again, picture a completely pitch black road with thick forest on both sides and only my headlights to show what's in front of me. This was a family of three or four, a tall, slim woman, an average height, weight man, a child, short hair, but couldn't tell the gender based on the clothing, and couldn't see their face, maybe around 8 years old, and the mother was pushing a fucking stroller. Their clothes looked normal, not tattered, but not nice. They were not carrying any kind of light source, meaning before I arrived behind them in my car, they had been walking in the pitch black. Okay. They were all facing away from me, walking completely silent in the middle of the street, the same direction I was heading. I had turned my music down to hear if they were speaking, had music playing, etc. They didn't. The hairs on my arms immediately stood up. Are they human? I came to a stop in the road behind them, obviously, and just sat there for a moment to let them move. They seemed to be completely unaffected by me and didn't even turn their heads slightly, nor did they attempt to move out of my way. I literally thought I was going insane or that I was dreaming. It was so surreal. Before I really before I really had time to fully process and register what I was seeing and how truly strange it was, they all at the same time stopped walking and very slowly turned to face my car. That is creepy as shit. That's creepy as shit. Okay. This scared the absolute shit out of me. I honestly didn't even give myself enough time to look at their faces as they turned. I immediately threw my car in reverse and sent it backwards for probably a full 20 seconds before flipping a U-turn and nearly running myself off the road and booking it to the other direction. The only thing I remember noticing is that the stroller looked to be completely empty. This was the part that sticks in my mind the most. I've never felt terror like that in my life. I checked my rearview mirror probably 1,000 times before getting to the main road and never saw a glimpse of them. In fact, I never saw a glimpse of them ever again. I tried asking my friend and his family about it, and only to essentially feel like I was insane because of the way they looked at me. Every time I tell the story, I get one of three reactions. They immediately think I'm fucking cuckoo, think I'm lying, or have had something sort of similar happen to them. I really don't care if anyone believes me. Honestly, it was and still is the creepiest thing that ever happened to me. I think about it all the time. It was either some weird ass family trying to scare the shit out of someone, a distraction for an attempted robbery, assault, etc., or it was something more sinister. I'm going to tell myself for probably the rest of my life that it was the first option. There's some people complaining about how it was written, so just FYI. Okay, so this is Traumatizing Night Shift. I wanted the last two to be more paranormal, so this is supposed to be another paranormal one. Okay, it's not as long as the other ones. Okay, this is probably the creepiest, most unexplainable thing that's ever happened to me. I used to work overnight as a security guard at the local port. Usually none of the port workers would stay overnight except for the safety official. I wouldn't be on the shift alone since the site has a radius of nearly 2 miles. Overnight, usually there would be 3 guards, including me. Since the area was fairly big, there were different posts, but front gate was the main entrance area where all the guards would be stationed overnight, since there was no need to put them in other posts due to the fact that there was no activity in the site at the time. I'm starting to see what they're talking about. The veteran guards that have been there for years would often say that the site was haunted. Given the fact that there have been accidents and deaths that occurred in that area a long time ago, I was aware that people died there due to freak accidents. And I do believe in angels and demons since I'm actually a religious person. No comment. But I always thought that the superiors were just messing with the new guys. I would work 5 to 6 nights out of the week. And for the first few weeks, I never really saw or heard anything out of the ordinary, except for maybe a few questionable creaks, and I would see a few misplaced objects while doing my patrol rounds, but nothing too crazy. Just to describe the setting to you, this was a fairly big site, and on occasion where there were big projects being constructed at the port, the workers would sometimes stay overnight due to the fact that there were times where the port workers were required to stay at the port for a few days. There's a gym in the site for their convenience. This gym is fairly old. In the gym, there is a sauna, weights, and even a racquetball court. If you don't know what a racquetball court is, it's similar to an indoor tennis court with thin plaster walls and thick glass doors. Usually our patrol rounds, me and one of the other guards, Mike, would stop by the gym and play a few rounds of racquetball before returning back to the front gate. One of those nights, me and Mike decided to hit a full workout instead of playing racquetball in the cage. This is around 2:30 a.m., the witching hour. Okay, and the entire building is so quiet that you can hear the electricity running through the lights. The air conditioner is off, and so is everything else. The only thing that's running are the lights. 15 to 20 minutes into the workout, we hear loud thumps. We crossed it off as nothing and continued working out. Then after a few more minutes, we heard the loud thump once more. At first, we thought it was our lieutenant, which couldn't have been walking around, but then we radioed him and he gave us his location, which was front gate. I tried thinking logically on what could be making those thumps on the wall. They were coming from the core on the other side. We thought it was the air conditioner, but then we remembered that it was off, and even when it's switched on during the day, there's no reports of thumps coming from the air conditioner. After a few more minutes, the thumps started occurring one right after the other. We were very creeped out at this point, but what we were about to witness still scares the absolute shit out of me till this day. We started to approach the other side of the gym to where the glass door was. We turned on a flashlight and aimed it toward the clear glass door, and I got chills all over my body. And I started tearing so much out of fear that I was about to cry. I think tearing. I started tearing, maybe. Yeah, so much out of fear that I was about to cry. We saw one of the balls mysteriously being tossed against the wall as if someone or something was playing inside the cage. We were both so confused and frightened to how this is really happening. We couldn't make any sense of it. We were scared shitless, and we started yelling and running away because we knew that there was probably something evil toying with us right there. As we sprinted full speed back to the front gate, the lieutenant saw us and asked us why we were tearing and running in a ridiculous manner. Tearing and running in a ridiculous manner. We told him what we witnessed, and his facial expression scared us even more. He then said, "That's why there's always guards that quit often. There's something evil in the area, and it's not the first time that something that bad has happened here." Then he showed us security footage of dark figures and shadows literally passing through the office areas, and lights mysteriously switching on and off. Till this day, I still get chills recounting my experience with my friends and family. And I'm getting chills right now as I'm typing this. I had never had a real encounter with the supernatural until that night. And they say that it was a demonic presence messing around. Others say it was just a ghost of a dead person who died in the area. I don't know what it was, but I didn't last long in that job after that. There were other experiences, but I'll send them at a later time. Interesting. So none of these stories to me were super terrifying. Glad You're Alive, super terrifying. These are the top stories on True Scary Stories or Reddit. Okay, so yeah, that's a creepy experience in general for that time. Sorry, my kid's in the background. I mean, yeah, seeing it, yeah, that'd be creepy, but like, that's also awesome at the same time. I wouldn't say it's an evil entity, but I can't say for him because I've never worked there. But seeing paranormal things as a security guard isn't too uncommon. That's like one of the main plot lines from many indie horror games out there. Maybe even some movies, actually, because I've watched a ton of scary movies in my lifetime. So I can tell you that's a common theme. Oh, some random clueless security guard is working at this job. He needs the money desperately. He doesn't know what he's getting into. He doesn't understand why people quit their job, blah, blah, blah. And then something ends up happening to him, you know. But most of the time, in these types of stories, the security guard doesn't always survive. I mean, you got to think like Five Nights at Freddy, the game, security guard didn't know what he was getting into. Like, oh, why are these people so scared, you know? Oh, because there's some crazy animatronics out there trying to kill, you know, people. So that's it for now. Thank you for watching. I didn't mean to have it this long. That second story was extremely long, and I did not know it was going to be that long. But hopefully you enjoyed this, and if you want more, please like and subscribe and leave a comment down below.